All right, with us now, CNN political commentator Bakari Sellers and Republican strategist Malik Abdul. And gentlemen, I want to shift back to what's happening in Texas. Maybe out of Texas is a better way of describing it this morning, because Texas State House Democrats have left the state, most going to Illinois, some going to New York, some to Boston. They're trying to break quorum so that there can't be a redistricting vote inside Texas, which could very well swing control of the U.S. House to the Republicans or keep it in their hands in 2026. Bakari Sellers, to you, talk to me about the dynamics at play here, because there are many different levels to this.
Yeah, I think it's fascinating. I think very rarely do you see the underpinnings of state government at work. I was a state legislator in a past life and actually participated in a walkout before. I walked out of the legislature when the Republicans had a majority, and there were certain things that we didn't want to do, and that was the only thing we could do, was break quorum. You look at what's happening on the 2026 level, where we're going to have the possibility for Democrats to take back the House. That's so very important, and you're going to see the dynamics between Gavin Newsom and the governor of New York versus the governor of Texas. But then what I find to be the most sexy is Governor Pritzker, and I don't even think Pritzker and sexy have been put in the same sentence before. Yeah. But what he's doing right now, the wealth that he has, the ability to bring these individuals to Chicago, playing these kind of games, showmanship, pushing back is what Democrats want with some substance. I think it's a multifaceted, intriguing story.
Malik, who blinks here?
Well, this is something that we've seen before, and your reporting earlier talked about the fact that this happened in 2021. And ironically, the person who was involved in that 2021 effort, and I think they came to Washington, D.C., was Jasmine Crockett. So I imagine you're probably having a number of people who will be looking at a congressional seat. But the larger problem is that it really does represent the issue with the Democratic Party, which is at this point less popular than both Donald Trump and the Republican Party. Democrats are in search of a leader. And so at this point, the only thing that they've been able to do since Donald Trump became president literally is protest. So this is just another example of that. I don't think that it's going to work out in the end, though.
Bakari, is this about fighting or is this about winning?
This is about fighting. I mean, I think that, with all due respect to my colleague this morning, I mean, we don't really have to do much to Donald Trump at this point in time. The economy is in shambles. Everything's going backwards. The wars that he was supposed to be elected to end, the 5 wars, as he calls them, around the country, are raging out of control. There's really not much for us to do in terms of policy to stop Donald Trump. He stops himself. Hell, he has Laura Loomer as one of his advisors. But this is about fighting and showing that we can fight. And be honest, Governor Pritzker is putting up that fight where other governors are more performative. He's actually being very substantive in fighting back.
Malik, about the jobs report, and we'll put the firing of the statistician to the side here, but you have these new jobs figures from May and June that were just anemic, 19,000, 14,000. How does that reframe really the entire economic argument that this White House has been making?
Well, first of all, the numbers itself is absolutely staggering. The fact that we were almost over 200,000 off, that is something that typically does not happen. Of course, revisions happen every single time with BLS, but we're looking at something different here. And Donald Trump, I don't agree with Donald Trump's decision to fire the commissioner, but obviously this is something that he can do. If you look at what a lot of the reporting is, whether it's Axios or other outlets, what they're talking about is that the explanation that they're having for the loss of job numbers actually is because of the immigration policies of Donald Trump. So I suspect what's happening is that maybe the administration really doesn't want to talk about the fact that although the immigration policies have been successful, shutting the border down, and there's a lot of support for that, there's also the push, what's happening in the businesses. And so I suspect that Donald Trump probably won't be happy until this kind of levels off. But none of this will matter until February of next year, which March, of course, the beginning of the midterm cycle.
I will say deportation has a larger impact on the unemployment number because it changes the denominator when you're factoring the unemployment ratio, which did tick up also. Jobs created, jobs lost, maybe not as much. But Bakari, to the point of just, again, reframing, because the last 3 months has all been about this White House saying, hey, the numbers are good, despite everyone saying that the sky would fall after the president's tariffs. The numbers not so good.
Yeah, no, and I think that immigration doesn't have much to do with job creation. But what we are seeing are that industries that usually have substantive job growth, you look closely at things like manufacturing, are just leveling off, right? If not decreasing. And what we're seeing is the president's core tenets, and what I've echoed many mornings on this show before, is competency and consistency, something that this White House hasn't shown. We're actually seeing that in these markets because we don't have competency, because we don't have consistency. And the best example to give you are tariffs. You're starting to see an economy be really, really hurt. The last thing I'll tell you, John, is the best economic indicator to look at, and I love the Cosmopolitan and I love to gamble enough, is Las Vegas, Nevada. And what you're seeing also is Las Vegas, Nevada, tourism going down. You're starting to see those jobs being lost in Las Vegas, Nevada. And because of that, that's also an indicator not just of a bad economy, but of that R word that Republicans are running away from, which is maybe we're on the brink of a recession.
Malik, how nervous do you think the White House got? I saw them acting in ways I hadn't seen them before, starting right here on this show, where you had one of the president's chief economic advisors basically admit, yeah, this economic report, worse than we wanted.
Well, this is something that the White House actually has to deal with. It's one thing to have the rhetoric or the talking points around these things, but at the end of the day, the data really does matter. So whether Donald Trump agrees or disagrees with the data is what the data is. And so I think that obviously they have to be concerned about that because, as I mentioned, the midterm cycle actually begins, votes begin in March. So as much as the administration and many Republicans may push back on this, it is something that has to be a concern for many voters because that economic anxiety that existed, that elected Donald Trump in 2024, it will exist next year. So obviously the administration has to be concerned.
Malik Abdul, Bakari Sellers, thanks so much for being with us this Monday morning.